I just released a collaborative project that I've been working on behind the scenes with some students from my Master Motion Design course. And in this video, I'm going to be breaking down exactly how I made this intro. Now, I settled on the idea that we would start with an alien character concentrating, and that would open up a third eye in the middle of their forehead. And it would be shiny and colorful and really inviting, and we'd maybe expect to travel in through the third eye, but instead we go up through the nose. And there would be this overload of all colorful elements flying past us as we travel up the nose and then eventually reach the mind. This was my initial design of the character that was done on pencil and paper, and I tidied that up a bit in Procreate. Then I created a vector version in Illustrator and tried some different color options, and finally settled on this version. Then I got to animating. I animated the rough pass of a lot of elements frame by frame using Callipeg, which is my new favorite iPad animation app. And first I did the hand to create the stylish reveal, going from a pinch to an OK gesture. And this is just 8 drawings in total. We've got the start, we've got the end, and we've got 2 frames of anticipation, the hands pinching and squeezing a bit more towards the left. And then it's just 4 frames of them actually opening up. And I think it came out really smooth. But yes, the starting pose doesn't look all that much like a hand, but I remembered some advice from the legend Bern Hogarth. I did a couple of versions of the head tilting and going up the nose because getting the right perspective is tricky even with a simple sphere like this. And I put those together with some simple motion in After Effects and got this. Then for the nose tunnel scene. First, I tried a method using shape layers in After Effects, and I thought this looked pretty cool, but it wasn't really giving me that intense speed and twisting chaotic motion that I wanted. So I searched far and wide for a suitable reference, and I finally found exactly what I was looking for. Water slides. I found a ton of videos from GoPros going down really cool looking water slides / raves, which had the exact energy that I wanted to convey. So I chopped up some sequences from a few, flipped them, scaled them, and sped them up to varying degrees, so I could use this as a close reference to the speed and add additional elements later. I also made a few different styles of lines flying out from the center. Straight ones, wiggly ones, and lightning ones, so that I could line them up and put them on top of the slide reference. My final rough animation looked like this. Now, before we get too deep up the nose of this character, I really want to highlight and thank all of the students that took part in this project. The results absolutely knocked my socks off. I was taken aback by the amazing work they produced and just the diversity of styles. Here is all of their work on screen, and many of them are available for freelance work. So if you need awesome animators, hit them up. They're all linked in the description. And some have already released breakdowns of their pieces for this project. So if you want a deeper look behind their work, please check those out too. And if you're interested in taking the same journey, if you enroll in the course before the 21st of July in this next week, you'll get exclusive and elusive bonus content, 2 additional assignments, and a full project breakdown of this microscope animation, which is over an hour long, and I'm going into all of the detailed details of exactly how I made it. And that is of course on top of the lifetime access to the 8 weeks of practical lessons, the project files, and community of amazing artists. QB Sound did an incredible job on the music and sound design for this project as well. Sound is one of the best ways to bring animation to life, and they absolutely nailed it. Okay, back up the nose. I cleaned up the rough animation of the hands and the head using shape layers in After Effects, essentially tweaking the path property frame by frame over the rough animation. Now for the hand, where there are some strokes over some areas to define the shapes, I added a shape layer over the top with just a few lines in it and animated those frame by frame too. Now the single hand, just in isolation, I am really happy with. It works better as a standalone element than I was expecting. Now together, they're not that noticeable in the context of everything else going on in the intro though, with the text and the third eye, but maybe that's for the better because the hands are backwards. If you were to summon a stylus out of thin air like this, your fingers would be facing the camera. Now I did discover this before I animated them, but I just think the design looks way better this way, the wrong way. So maybe it's not the wrong way after all. Also, the character has no arms, it just has floating hands, so it's entirely possible they're holding it like this anyway. For the third eye, I used an Animator gradient technique that I teach in the course, using an effect stack of gradient ramp and colorama. I used 3 different colored versions, and these rotating spokes as mats for them. Then I slapped a pupil on top with a highlight, and really you can add any footage under a pupil and it will look like a cool eye. For the final version of the tunnel, again, frame by frame, I lined up some shapes with the reference footage and just added more chaotic elements over the top. First these sharp gemstone boogers, then these frame by frame tunnel rings, and then these discs at the end. I made the top half of the tunnel a different color to make it feel a little more structured and confined and less like an open space. Then I added these lines that wrap around the edge of the tunnel. Then these yellow frame by frame lines emerging out of the center that I masked some areas out of so they're not just overtaking the screen and there are lines everywhere. And the last elements I added were those thicker lines and squiggles coming out from our center that were cleaned up with shape layers and a fade to white at the end. Then I added some effects over everything. Some of my favorite looping texture to add a bit of grit to everything. Then a slight hand-drawn boil to distress the edges of each line and make it look a bit more hand-drawn to merge the frame-by-frame and vector elements so they look more cohesive. Then a really subtle shake so it looks like it's coming through a film reel. Deep glow over the top of everything to make it feel a little dreamier and make the colors a little lighter. And then some really subtle noise, and I took the frame rate down to 12 frames per second, again to match the frame-by-frame elements that were animated at that lower frame rate so it all just looks more cohesive. And here's what everything looks like together. It was an absolute treat to work with so many techniques and elements in this sequence, and I hope this intro was a good enough lead into the amazing pieces from the students. If you haven't seen the full video yet, you can watch it here.